7 o'clock. So just want to welcome everybody here. Thank you for attending. My name is Ben Bell, I'm principal of Ashland High School, in case we haven't met yet. And Samuel and Rebecca, you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Samuel Bogdanov. I'm the superintendent of Ashland Schools, and just really glad to be able to join you here tonight, Ben, as you share the model for the high school hybrid program.
And hi, my name's Rebecca Garmati, and I'm one of the assistant principals here at the high school, and I'm happy to be here tonight.
So as we go through the presentation, in case you're new to Zoom, if you look down at the bottom toolbar of your Zoom window, you'll see a few buttons you can press there. We're actually not going to be using the chat feature tonight. It's actually turned off, even though the button's there. So if you have a question, you'll want to click that Q&A. You can type in your question. It is private. It just goes to the presenters. So don't be shy about asking anything you might want to know more about. And we'll be monitoring those questions as we go along and answering some along the way. And others will hold back for a Q&A at the end of the presentation. If for some reason we missed your question and didn't get to you, we will do our best to follow up with you through email or a phone call to make sure you get your question answered. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and start. So I'm going to share my screen here and be posting up a PowerPoint. All right, Rebecca, can you see that? Am I sharing my screen?
Yes,
Yep,
you are.
good.
All right, thank you. So this is our hybrid information night. My intent with the presentation is to explain in a little more detail a lot of what was already included in the communications that went out in the survey, and also the Grisogram hybrid edition that we put out Monday evening. It's a very different schedule, and it could prove to be confusing. And so we wanted the opportunity to present the information in a few different ways, and also, of course, have the opportunity to answer questions as well. And then there'll be a few additional pieces of information that weren't included, and we're just going to continue to share information as we fine-tune the plan. So let's go ahead and start. Kind of start first with the basics, but hybrid seems to be the thing that we're all talking about right now in education, and I just wanted to take an opportunity to, for our purposes right now, in terms of the pandemic, kind of define what that means. So when we say a hybrid schedule, what we're really talking about is a learning day where some students are accessing learning in person on campus, while others are going to be accessing learning at home at the same time. And so lots of different ways that schools are tackling hybrid. Each schedule is unique to the school and their master schedule and the community and staffing and everything else. So we'll kind of go through what some of those pieces were that affected how our schedule at the high school took the shape that it did. You'll probably notice, especially at the secondary level, hybrid schedules, that something that's commonly done, and we're certainly doing here at AHS, is dividing students into groups. So you probably read in the plan that we'll be dividing students into a group A and a group B. And that group A and B is just for students that are coming on campus for hybrid. And the reason why we're having to do that is because of the social distancing requirements that are in place. It means that we can't fit full classes in our classrooms. So in Oregon, what are the requirements of hybrid? There are actually many requirements for hybrid, more than you'd want to read on a slide for sure. So I just listed up some of the key features that really informed the kind of schedule that we were going to be able to put in place. So obviously a big one, which I just mentioned, is the social distancing. So we have to maintain 6 feet of space between all individuals at all times. And so that's really a kind of a 6-foot circle, imagine, around each person. So it's roughly 35 square feet. So that means we've got some real square footage limitations in our classrooms. We've got some older buildings here on the campus with smaller rooms. And so we've got to be mindful of that. And so that's part of why we're looking at a group A and a group B. Another big consideration for us is student cohorting. And what cohorting means in this context is basically scheduling students in groups that would travel from class to class together. So imagine a group of 10th grade students on campus. They would have the same math class together, same teacher, same room. Then next period, they would have English together, and so on. Now, that is generally not the way scheduling works at a high school campus. Just to give you an idea, we've got about 930 students at the high school right now, and we have about 930 unique student schedules. So, after classes, students scatter. They go many different directions. So we're not really organized to do that, and I'll go into why that is in a little bit. Scheduling in cohorts, though, it's a challenge for sure at the high school level, but from a health and safety point of view, it makes a whole lot of sense. And it is a mandate from the ODE. And really why that's a good health and safety precaution is because if we've got student cohorts and if there is a positive COVID case within that group, we don't have to close down the whole campus. We can just have that group of students quarantine, and their ability to come to campus would be disrupted for 10 days or however long the quarantine period would be. But as soon as that's over, they'd return to campus. So it's a way to minimize that risk. At the high school level, though, the challenge of that is that in order to, if we had a schedule like that students were cohorted into groups, it would really require eliminating many course options that we would normally have available. So it would hit electives pretty hard. And even within our core departments, there are oftentimes many different choices that a student could take to satisfy a requirement. And so there are many schools around Oregon in our area that made some tough decisions and made a Bell schedule for the whole year that was really designed around hybrid, even though just now we're really having the ability to get in a CDL. And with student cohorting, kind of the way that's defined right now is that within a school week, students can't come in contact with more than 100 other students on campus during the school day. Now, one of the kind of quirks about this is that after school activities like athletics or after school clubs, they're not actually counted as part of the cohorts. We still do contact tracing with those groups, so make sure that we've got a good account of which students attended an athletic practice or whatever on a given day. So that way we know who was there, but they don't count towards the 100 that constitutes a potential cohort group during the week. Other big considerations, obviously, wearing masks at all times. That's for students and staff. And as we think about in-person instruction, that changes a little bit how we think about conducting classes like choir or wind ensemble, where we've got a lot of people breathing hard in one room together. So thinking of ways to rethink that and make that safe. And then we can't have students sharing materials either. So our science classes in particular have been thinking of ways to do labs and other fun activities where students aren't having to share materials. So I know initially when I started to share our concept for hybrid with some folks, one of the natural questions was, why can't students be on campus at the high school more often? And it really, the answer to that question goes back to in summer when we were kind of faced with this decision of, whether we're going to open the school year in a hybrid schedule or whether we're going to have comprehensive distance learning. And so once it became clear that we were going to be in CDL, we were kind of looking at the situation, and case rates were at that point in time definitely going up. We knew that we were going to be heading into fall and the winter season and cold and flu season, holidays, family gatherings, things like that. And it definitely seemed like we were going to be in a CDL model for probably most of the school year, if not the whole school year. At least that's how it seemed to us at the time. And so looking at it from that perspective, and then also considering a lot of the sacrifices that we'd have to make in terms of the programs and courses that we really do want to offer students, we decided to kind of shift our priority and design a master schedule that would serve students best in a CDL format, knowing that that was probably what the majority of the year would look like. So we really wanted to provide as many options for students as possible. We did reduce the Bell schedule down from our 8-period block to a 6-period block, as you all know. And really the reason for that was we knew that CDL was going to, it was going to be a challenge for some students. And we wanted to do what we could to reduce the workload as students were learning from home. But we also wanted to provide a robust offering of electives compared to what we would be able to do in hybrid. We wanted to provide full core class offerings, AP courses within our humanities departments, our full selection of, or offering of selectives, the different English courses that juniors and seniors can take. So really prioritizing as much as possible what students had forecasted for in the spring. We knew that maintaining engagement in CDL was going to be a key to having a successful school year. And I felt like if we could at least offer students classes that the majority of them had selected themselves, we would come out of the gate with the best shot of keeping our students engaged for the school year. So what that means is that we did not actually schedule students into cohorts, as many other schools did. And that's not a criticism of other schools at all. Everybody's got to make decisions that are going to be best for their students and communities. But I really felt like offering choices to our students would be key for them academically and for maintaining engagement. And we just felt like we could have pre-built that hybrid schedule and had everybody run through that hybrid schedule while we're in CDL. But I was really wary to go in that direction, kind of limiting choices and putting students in classes that maybe they didn't choose themselves or weren't interested in. I felt like that might hurt us in the CDL format. So in all, that plan has worked pretty well for us for by the time we start hybrid, excuse me, it'll have worked for about 75% of the school year. So, we were in fact in CDL for most of the year, but now we have to think about a pivot to hybrid. So as we kind of wrestled with the choices over the past month and a half of ways we could tackle that, we thought for a short period of time, would it even be possible to rebuild the master schedule mid-semester into some kind of specialized hybrid where maybe there's 4 or 5 classes, we'd have to reschedule students. But we felt like that would be really disruptive to students and teachers and cause more stress than it would probably be worth compared to any benefits we would get out of that. So our strategy shifted to, okay, we've got this current master schedule that we really built around CDL. How are we going to modify that to allow students as much in-person instructional opportunities as possible? So we looked at our bell schedule, made some adjustments. I'll put that up in a second, and you've probably already seen it on the survey. But another consideration we had as well is, thinking about what cohorts are and trying to minimize the interactions that students have with one another as much as possible. We realized that, having class changes or passing periods while students are on campus at this time would be really problematic. We'd have many students, hundreds of students out in the hallways at the same time. And we felt like that was maybe at this point in time not a risk we felt was worth taking. So we moved towards really looking at that last instructional block of the day as our opportunity to provide in-person instruction, because and I'll show you that visual in a second. That block of time is kind of isolated in our school day. We've got lunch right before it, and then we can end the day right after it, so there's no need to have a passing period or have students change classes while they're on campus. And then the question became, well, okay, if that's our main opportunity for in-person instruction with our red days and white days, that would really only provide in-person instruction for just 2 classes, periods 3 and 7. So, what can we do to provide opportunities for in-person instruction in all their classes? And that's how we landed on this model of a rotating bell schedule, which again, you've probably seen in the survey, and it'll be on an upcoming slide for you to see again. To make sure that that last block is worth it for students to come to campus, we wanted to lengthen that amount of time. So it's now a full 2 hours compared to 85 minutes. And that'll provide teachers some opportunities to do some real, team building in the class. So this is the first opportunity students have had to be together, and for teachers to be with students. And so we want to provide some opportunity for just some fun. This year's been short on fun. So as well as good instruction, those social opportunities in classes too. And then again, dividing students into a group A and B allows us to ensure enough space in each classroom. So this is how the bell schedule is going to look starting March 29th. And you'll notice that blocks 1 and 2, we still start instruction at 9:30, just like we do now. But we have shortened the amount of time of each of those blocks. They're both 85 minutes right now. We shortened them both to 70. And that was really so that we could add the extra time to the last block. So for all students, whether they're selecting hybrid or not, they're going to continue receiving instruction at home virtually, just like they are now. So, it's CDL for all students for blocks 1 and 2. And then this is a little bit of a change. So we go to lunch. It's still a 40-minute lunch. But then directly after lunch, we're going to go into office hours. So our current schedule has us ending the day with office hours after our last block. The reason why we've made that change is because we realized for the students that are going to be traveling to campus, so let's say it's Monday and group A will be coming to campus, 40-minute lunch just wasn't enough time to give students time to eat at home and then travel to campus. So we needed to create a little more space between block 2 and 3. And so we decided to move office hours up to that spot. Now what that means is that, again, let's say it's Monday, and group A is going to be traveling to campus for in-person instruction at 1:30. That means group A isn't really going to get an opportunity to use office hours that day. So we're really designing office hours in hybrid to serve the students that will be learning from home that day. So that means all students will still get 3 office hours in the week because we have the Wednesdays, and then group A would still have office hours Thursdays and Fridays available. And then group B, that kind of opportunity just switches. So they're learning from home Mondays and Tuesdays, and they can tune in for office hours at that time. But then during office hours, they're traveling to campus during that block. So hopefully that makes sense. This also provided an opportunity too, if when we've got after school clubs happening, and we do have athletics as well happening right now after school, we get to end the day with instruction and then transition directly into those activities. We felt like it would be problematic to have office hours at the end of the day and maybe have students waiting around campus with nothing to do or nowhere to be. We want to make sure if students are on campus that they're supervised. That way we know that all the safety requirements are being met at all times. Rebecca, have we got any questions about schedule that maybe would be timely to answer right now?
No, not one that's easy to answer right now. No, I
Okay.
think as we move through it and more information is heard, some of this will make more sense.
Perfect. All right, so this, you saw this on the survey as well. This is an example of our Bell Schedule rotation. So this is how we're going to provide opportunities for different classes to meet in person each week. And so basically the way it's going to work is week 1. So let's say this is the week of March 29th. The order of the class periods will be exactly like normal, just like it is now. We'll follow the new Bell schedule, but the order of the classes is the same. So red days will be 1, 2, 3. White days will be 5, 6, 7. And with that period 3 group being and the period 7 group being the in-person opportunities. So here you can see Monday, Tuesday is when group A will be in person, and then Thursday, Friday is group B. And we're not changing our Wednesday schedule. So advisory, office hours, applied learning, all that is going to stay exactly the same. For any students that are coming on Wednesdays currently for limited in-person instruction, they'll still continue to come for that support at their designated time. And we're also going to be looking at some opportunities to expand that support to students, trying to increase the support we give to kids. So week 2 now, so this is the following week, the order of the classes is going to change a bit. So you'll notice that we've held period 1 in place. It's still happening in the morning. And then period 5 is our morning block on white days traditionally. We've held that in place. What we tried to do with our rotations is only move the period that we needed to move in order for that class to happen in person at the end. So week 2, our red day schedule goes 1, 3, 2. And then our white day schedule goes 5, 7, 6. Okay, and again, same pattern. Group A is always coming Monday, Tuesday. Group B is always coming Thursday, Friday. Our final week of the rotation, we start with period 3, but we held period 2 in place. That's our middle period on red days. And then period 6, we held that in place. That's our middle period on white days. So trying to provide as much consistency with what I'll admit can be a confusing schedule as possible. So the rotation then on red goes 3, 2, 1. So we end the day with period 1. Group A comes in person. White days, we go 7, 6, and we end in 5 for that in-person opportunity. So what this does for every student that is selecting into hybrid, we've got an opportunity for in-person instruction in every single one of their classes, spread over 3 weeks. And this 3-week rotation would just start over again. So, week 4, we would start with periods 1, 2, 3, and then we go 5, 6, 7. So it's a pattern that will repeat itself through the school year. So between March 29th and June 18th, our last day of school, is 12 weeks total. So that's an opportunity potentially for 4 full rotations through this system that we've set up. Now, I will admit that it could be confusing or overwhelming. And so what we're going to do is daily put up on our website what the rotation for for that day is going to be, what order the classes are going to happen in. We'll put it out on our Facebook, our Instagram. Teachers will be giving daily reminders of, don't forget everybody, tomorrow our periods are going to be. So we're just going to put it out there in as many different ways as we possibly can. And we will definitely give kids grace if they are accidentally popping into the wrong Zoom session because they're confused. So we understand it's going to be an adjustment. Really, we're all going to have to acclimate to it. But we're doing all of this to provide as much in-person opportunity in our classes safely as we can. So for our students who are going to remain distance learning, they're going to continue to attend all of their classes virtually, just like they're doing now through Zoom sessions and through Canvas. And they're going to follow the new Bell schedule and the period rotations, just like the rest of campus. So, with those synchronous lessons, they're going to need to follow that Bell schedule. For the last block of the day, where we've got a group coming to campus for the in-person instruction, there's going to be some variance amongst teachers and departments in terms of how they're going to handle balancing those lessons. But it sounds like for the most part, students who are going to be learning from home, whether they're the hybrid group that's at home that day or whether they're the CDL students, that last block will probably be heavy on some asynchronous learning opportunities during that block. So teachers right now, they're working through the logistics of how they're going to serve both students at the same time. And there may be some teachers and departments that are looking at more of some synchronous opportunities as well. But it seems like there'll be, at this point, a lot of asynchronous lessons for the at-home learners for the last block of the day. That will be equivalent to what the students in person are getting in terms of content. And I think I've covered this already, but when Group A is on campus, Group B is at home. And then we switch that up on the kind of the Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursday, Fridays, as you've seen. Now, what about our ninth graders? We've got some plans in the works. Nothing that's ready to be shared out just yet, but we're definitely aware of the fact that our ninth graders have not been, properly introduced to the high school at this point. So I know typically eighth graders in the spring, there's campus tours that happen, but of course that didn't happen last school year because we were shut down in the spring due to COVID. And so what we want to avoid is students coming on campus March 29th, ninth graders just feeling totally lost and overwhelmed. So we're trying to come up with some creative ways to help orient students to campus. Maybe some campus tours that we're able to provide, but we're really looking to try to alleviate their stress and help them have a sense that they know what to expect and have sort of a mental map of the layout of campus. So more information to come on that. So student arrival. I know elementary schools are doing some staggered arrival times. And I think what we're going to do, and we'll provide a detailed communication about this once we have the details nailed down. But due to the layout of our campus and the many different entry points that we have, we feel like a staggered arrival time is going to be tough to really properly monitor and enforce. So we're really going to focus on having specific kind of lineup areas for students as they come on campus, knowing which class they're going to be in, and they would go to a designated spot for that class, line up, and be ready to meet their teacher. For most of our classes, particularly in the humanities building and our science labs, those classrooms all have doors which open outside. So for the most part, they'll be able to line up outside of the classroom. But we'll have to have some different areas for classes that are second floor of the library, in our theater building. So more information to come on that. Just know that that is part of our thinking and planning process at this time. So we'll be sharing more about that. but the arrival process will look a little different than elementary. For example, if you've got elementary age students right now. As teachers greet students before they come in the classroom, there'll be a daily kind of visual screening that happens, make sure everyone's healthy, just making sure that students aren't symptomatic. We're not going to do a physical temperature check, but definitely we'll be asking those questions each day, any recent fevers or new symptoms. If anybody is coming to campus and they report that they're symptomatic, we're going to have to call home and have parents come pick them up. So definitely asking for help with parents or from our parents on this one, that if you are thinking that your student may not be well, please don't send them to campus. So the district has been great. They're developing a digital check-in system for students. So a way for kind of a QR code for each student that the teacher can scan. It'll feed right into attendance, and then we'll also know who is in which room for contact tracing purposes. So I know this is definitely a question, right, for parents and for students too, probably. So what if there is a positive COVID case? What's going to happen? So there's lots of different variables to think about, but the short answer is this. We would immediately work with our district nurse, Belinda Brown, who's been fantastic, and coordinate with the local health authority for contact tracing. Any exposed cohort would have to quarantine potentially for up to 10 school days. That time frame can change a little bit once contact tracing happens and they figure out when the exposure happened, but in general, that would be the time frame. Students who are on quarantine will still be able to access their classes through CDL, through Zoom, through Canvas, just like they're doing now. So instruction won't be interrupted for those students, but definitely until the quarantine period is up, we wouldn't be able to have them back on campus. Just a little update in terms of other in-person activities that are going on. This is weird to say here in March, but right now it's fall sports season. So currently we've got cross country, JV football, soccer, and volleyball, which are actually starting games. So we had some games happen this week. And we're working with teachers to coordinate and figure out exactly which clubs will be happening with on-campus meetings. We want to be able to provide a calendar for families and students so that you'd know, a particular club that you'd be interested in, what day it's happening, and at what time after school. But that is a priority for us too. We really want to provide some opportunities for connection like that. Now that we're able to open up a little more, I know that everyone has been really starved for our opportunities like that. And so in terms of information, that's really what I have. We're going to continue communicating out, like I said. At this point, it'll be a lot of logistical details that we've got to work out and want to communicate out to families. We want to really be transparent with that, but also want to take the time to do a good job and make sure we're putting a good plan in place. And we'll be communicating as well about what our plan is for our 9th graders. So, Rebecca?
Sure. Yep, I'll pick some ones that were most commonly asked. A big one is, can people pick which cohort, and when are we going to find out which cohort our student is in?
Yeah, very good question. So the cohorting, or actually the groups, the group A or the group B, that is really going to be determined by the survey results that we're going to be looking at next week that families are filling out now. So obviously we need to know how many students are coming to campus, and then find a way to make a split that happens so that group A and group B are roughly the same size. There's some other, we've got other considerations too. Transportation has asked that maybe a certain bus route happen. We've or group those students into a group A or B. So we make sure that there are busing resources that are available consistently. So we will have, for families that have more than one student at the high school, we'll definitely work with those families and get some input in terms of, if it makes sense to go ahead and schedule those siblings in the same group so that they're coming to campus on the same day. I would imagine that would be an interest for families in that situation. But in general, we're just not going to be able to kind of schedule students into a group A or group B based on request. We're going to be dealing with hundreds of students and trying to figure out a schedule that makes the most sense. The big priority is that we've got groups A and B roughly the same size, and that the composition of those groups is such that we make sure that we're able to meet the square footage requirements of our classrooms. So those are going to be the biggest concerns. And once we have that kind of organized, we will obviously be sharing out with families which group your student would be in.
Another one that was probably the most tally marks was the block of time, the 2 hours for students that are in CDL, and our students that are at home that day or in CDL, their instruction is 2 hours.
Yeah, good question. So that kind of goes back to what I was saying in terms of how different teachers are planning around that time, right? It seems like right now, a lot of the lessons for the students learning from home, whether they're CDL or the other group that's at home that day, they'll probably be asynchronous lessons by and large. So, if they would be logging in, opening the lesson and kind of working on it at their own pace, but making sure that they turn it in by whatever the due date is that the teacher sets.
Okay, thank you. Questions about why quite a few about the quarantining. Why is it up to 10 days and not 14 days?
Samuel, I want to make sure I got that information right, but I do recollect there was a change to 10 days.
That's our current understanding, is that the health department has downgraded the length of the quarantine time to 10 days if you don't get a test after exposure, and 7 days if you get a negative test towards the end of the 7 days. They are still recommending 14-day self-quarantines if you travel out of state.
Thank you.
Just questions about transportation and getting those bus schedules out to families, which we would, do that as soon as we know all of that information, and about students parking on campus and when they could pick up a parking pass.
Oh, that's a good one. So I'll make a note of that. I'll be honest, I'm not sure. So that'll be one that we look into and get that information out to folks as well.
I know they're getting, the staff has been working on organizing the parking because teachers have been parking everywhere. So getting that organized so we know we have what spaces we have for students. So quite a few questions about how we're ensuring the 6 feet apart and ensuring safety and the processes of arrival and dismissal and how that's going to be safe.
Yeah, and so those are some of those logistical pieces that we're still going to be kind of nailing down in the next few weeks here. But the short answer is, in terms of how do we monitor and maintain the 6 foot of distance, we're just really going to be structuring our time with students on campus in such a way that there is good supervision in all parts of campus at all times. So going back to that 1:30 start time for instruction, we will be sharing out with folks once we have that map laid out of where drop-off points are going to be and line up for different classes of when the drop-off window will be. And so we'll have a window of time where we're going to ask families to drop off, or if students are walking, for them to walk onto campus at that time. But we really can't have students coming on campus too early if we're not set up to supervise them at that point. So we'll really ask for parent help with that one, making sure that students aren't getting here too early. It's within that window of time. And that's another reason why we moved office hours from the end of the day and bumped it up. That way we can go straight from instruction, and if students are staying on campus, it's going to only be for a club, which is with a staff member, or it's going to be for athletics, which again is with staff members out on the field. So really at all time, if we've got students on campus, they're going to be with a staff member being supervised and safe. And we're also just going to do a lot of upfront training with our students as well. We want to create some kind of instructional videos of how to do certain things on campus, how to come on campus, how to line up for classes, how to make sure you're maintaining that distance. Desks and student seating in classrooms will be distanced. I've actually got a 6-foot measuring stick right now in my office. And so custodial and teachers and administration, we're all going to make sure that seating is at least 6 feet apart for instruction as well.
A couple other pretty common ones. Can you pick and choose which classes you're going to come to if you're choosing hybrid?
Yeah, good question. So, we're going to say that if you're opting into hybrid, you're really opting in all the way. So we're planning our square footage literally down to the foot in classrooms. And we know that there's a lot of value in in-person instruction, which is why we're going through all the effort to make this possible. And yeah, if you're selecting hybrid, we definitely expect students to come to class each time their class lands in that last block of the day.
And the other one is if I choose hybrid and it's not working for me, can I go back to CDL and vice versa?
Sure. Obviously, in a perfect world, because we're doing a lot of careful planning, we're definitely going to encourage folks to try and stick it out with whichever way they choose. I would say that if you're on the fence and you're not quite sure, after hearing everything and looking at the plans, if hybrid is going to be for you and your student, I definitely encourage families to start with hybrid because we're planning for every student that's going to be in a classroom. And so I can't promise per se that if a student started in CDL and wanted to change to hybrid, that we'd actually have space in all of the classes for that to happen. So easier, I prefer not to have to make a change, but I understand that considerations may come up. It's much easier to switch from hybrid to CDL than the other way around.
I did have somebody ask new students to Ashland that aren't necessarily ninth graders. We are looking at wrapping those students into our ninth grade tours so that they get familiar with the campus as well. So that was a specific one. After school and some questions about sports, where and how do they change for their sport after school, or if they're at home, getting over to their sport in enough time to be there on time.
Yeah, those are good questions, and those are some things we still need to connect with athletics and Carl Kemper and make sure we've got a process for that. So I think most of our practices start at 4 and we're ending instruction at 3:30. So potentially there could be enough time for a student to go home, change, and come back. But we'll see if there's possibility as well for students to change in the locker rooms. So we'll follow up on that one.
Yep. Great. I'm trying to see what else are common themes here. Well, a good one is, do we have any idea, what would be the timeline of getting out what possibly next school year is going to look like? And how this schedule is going to flow into next year?
Great question. I smile because I would sure love to know.
I can
Um,
maybe address that a little bit, Ben. We hope that we'll have that information within, probably sooner the better, right? There's still a lot of unknowns in terms of what the Department of Education may ask for us of the fall. We're shooting to have students back on campus next fall full time. If we are allowed to do that with state guidelines, that's our goal. I do know, Ben, I think we're getting close to time here. I don't know.
yeah, we sure are. Maybe we'll take just one more, and then that'll be it.
If there's a positive case, in a cohort, how would athletics be affected? How would that affect that child's sport?
Sure. So I'm understanding the question. If the student athlete is in a cohort that's quarantining, that would also mean that student could not come on campus for practice or to participate. They'd have to stay at home until the quarantine period is up. So yeah, good questions. I know that there's a lot to think about and consider, and there's a lot to plan for. As our plans develop and certain areas of it become more clear, we're going to be sharing those out just like we've done this week. I definitely appreciate all of the participation here tonight and all of the questions. And again, if we've missed a question, we'll do our best to follow up with you. And we'll also post this up on the website. But I just want to say thank you and good night.
And Samuel, there were a lot of other questions that were more specific. Are we able to save this Q&A?
Yes, the Q&A will be saved and we'll be able to